Hey everyone, this is TJ Presley. This is my video for Module 8, Legal Aspects of Teacher Evaluation. So today I'll be talking to you about three different things. The first is the evaluation process at my school. The second is a legal case that I found here in Oregon. And finally, I'll wrap it up by sharing how I'd ensure that the evaluation process that I'd use in the future as an administrator would be compliant. Okay, for starters, the teacher evaluation process. Again, for those of you that don't know, I work at a small district out here in Oregon. It's the Pilot Rock School District. Our evaluation process is really built on the basis of improving instruction. There is a great emphasis on professional growth. There's a lot of different things that are listed in our teacher handbook that I'll go through with you. What it's saying is the evaluation process will promote the following. I just want to point out some of these with you. Excellence in teaching and learning, reflection, student growth, quality professional development, etc., etc. You know, a lot of these things that were listed in that handbook are some of the same topics that were shared with us in some of those articles that we read and some of the videos that we watched. So for the evaluation, it's a four-part process. The first part is the fall goal conference with your supervisor. The second part is informal observations, followed up by formal observations, and then the fourth part is written evaluation and conference. So back to number one, the fall goal conference with your supervisor. This was my first year teaching, so obviously my first year going through this process. But there, during the first week of school, we were required to write down some goals that we'd like to accomplish for this upcoming school year. Mine were tied directly to math performance, since I'm a junior high math teacher. And I set goals where I would showed some growth with kind of a pre-test, post-test model that we're all very familiar with. The second piece is the informal observations. And this is one where it's pretty straightforward across the board, no matter how much experience you have. And there's a minimum of 2 informal observations for all teachers at our school. The next one, formal observations. Now this is where things change a little bit depending on the amount of service that you have. If you're in your first year, like me this year, I had a total of 3 formal observations. If you're in your second or your third year, that number reduces down to 2 total formal observations. And then once you've reached tenure or become what they call a contract teacher, you're only required to have 1 every other year from that point on. Okay, so more on the teacher evaluation process. Our school district out in Pilot Rock follows the Danielson model that we're all familiar with. There's 4 domains that make up the Danielson model. Those are planning and preparation, classroom environment, instruction, and professional responsibilities. The evaluation model that we use at my school takes the Danielson model but also adds a 5th domain, and that's student learning and growth. Scoring seems to be pretty consistent across the board with other schools that I've heard or listened to. You can range anywhere from unsatisfactory all the way up to exemplary. And obviously, proficient or better is what you're looking for a pretty good evaluation. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys a breakdown. I had mentioned that there are 5 domains that we're evaluated on. Within those 5 domains are 18 standards. So for planning and preparation, there's 5 that fall under that category. Knowledge of content, as well as your students, instructional goal setting, lesson design and assessment planning. Then we move into domain number 2, classroom environment, talking a little bit more about the climate, procedures, student behavior. Domain number 3, instruction, talking about delivery, feedback that you're giving to your students, and then the assessments that you're using for learning. Domain number 4, professional responsibility, our own professional growth, record keeping and communication, commitment to instructional initiatives. And then finally, our 5th domain, student learning and growth, where we're talking more about student performance. This is both on formative and summative assessments, portfolio assessments, and then our state testing, where we have our standardized assessments, and then our performance task assessments. So the question was asked during this module what the procedure is if a teacher didn't really like what went on with their evaluation or didn't agree with the evaluation. So our grievance procedure, as we call it in our teacher handbook, follows 4 different levels, and I'm going to walk through that process with you. So the first one, level 1, is with your building principal. And there's a couple different things that can happen here. You can find resolution on an informal basis. So basically what that's saying is if you were to walk into your principal's office and say, hey, I got a problem with this evaluation, I don't agree with it, you could come to some sort of agreement on an informal basis and just simply through a conversation. The second part to level 1 would be a formal conversation, or excuse me, a formal grievance that you're submitting, and with that, that's a written response, and it must be submitted within 14 days from your evaluation. So in this case, let's say I got my evaluation here at the end of the year. I didn't really agree with what the principal was saying, so I had 14 days to write a written response to that, filing a grievance. So level 2, let's say things aren't settled with the building principal. We're moving on now to the second step or the second level, and that would be the superintendent in this case. So really what this is saying, there's no informal one with this. It's all formal, so it needs to be written. And this needs to happen within 14 days from the response that I received in level 1. So I have an additional 2 weeks to file a grievance with the superintendent now and to move it further down the line. So level 3, let's say I didn't get the answer I was looking for with the superintendent. Now I want to take it a step further. I have 7 days to file a formal written request with the school board. Now, once the school board receives that, within a week or 7 days, they will decide when to have a hearing. They'll give us the location, the date, and the time. Typically, that is going to be at the next upcoming school board meeting, which is on a monthly basis for us. And then finally, level 4 is arbitration. The way that arbitration works in my state, not sure if it's the same thing for Kansas, but there's a list of 7 people that work directly with our particular school district. From that list of 7, the teacher that's filing for arbitration can select from that list of seven people. And these 7 people are employees or they're affiliated with the Oregon Employment Relations Board. From there, they'll go through the process with whoever they decide to work with. Okay, so moving forward onto the second point, we're going to talk about a legal case that happened. This actually happened here in Oregon. This is the St. Helens School District back in 2014. So I'm sure most of you are not too familiar with the state of Oregon. I currently teach in Eastern Oregon. St. Helens is a school district that's over near the coast in the northwest corner of Oregon. So anyways, this happened out in St. Helens. Basically, long story short, what happened, a teacher sued the school district for wrongful termination. So, aligns exactly with what we're talking about in this particular module. What had happened, some backstory on it, the school denied his request to adopt a new policy regarding student access to tools. So this is a shop teacher, high school level shop teacher. His policy that he was suggesting to his school district was saying that if students had a history of violence or whatever it may be, violence was the biggest one that he had mentioned in the story. But if students have a history of violence, and he wanted to make sure that these shop students didn't have access to some of these tools. Now, those of you that are familiar with shop tools of any sort, a wrench can be pretty dangerous, and we all know that saws and other types of tools can be pretty dangerous too. So he wanted a new policy where students could not access that if they had some issues with anger. So after he proposed this new policy. It didn't really mention much of this in the story, but this particular teacher actually left for medical reasons, so he was on a medical leave of absence. During this time, the school district actually asked him to resign. He was asking for an extended medical leave, and it may have caused some issues there at the school. Unsure on that, but they asked him to resign. He refused, and that was the end of the conversation. So when he called to get ready and geared up for the next school year, say, "Hey, I'm coming back," they said, "Oh, wait a minute, you've been terminated." Okay, so now obviously he's suing the school district because they failed to notify him immediately of his termination. He had no idea that he was terminated. So to say that he was wrongfully terminated would be an understatement at that. So it said in the story that he was actually pursuing a $600,000 settlement. Really what it came down to is insurance ended up paying this claim, and it was $17,500, so significantly different than what he was seeking. But he did accept it, and everything got settled outside of court. Okay, so finally, the last thing I'm going to talk to you about today is the reflection. So again, what am I going to do to ensure that my team, my staff, myself is being compliant with the evaluation system and following all the rules and procedures? You know, really the biggest thing for me, and this is kind of a reflection from my management career, is just become familiar with the policies and procedures that you have set forth in your school district. I think it's a no-brainer, but really, you know, it's going to really pay dividends for you to take the time to read those and become very familiar with them. Next thing is to ask questions. You know, I'm not afraid to ask questions. If I don't know, go find someone that does. I mean, that's the only way that you're going to figure it out. I'm a firm believer in that. That's what I share with my students. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I don't care what position you're in. Ask, please. Next thing, seek help when necessary. That kind of falls in line with asking questions, but really with this, it could go a little bit further and maybe seeking legal advice. I have plenty of friends that are attorneys. They're a phone call or a text message away. We have our own attorney that represents our school district, so it doesn't hurt to make a phone call and ask and make sure that you're doing all the right things. And then finally, there's workshops and classes all the time. We're always working on professional development. What a great way to knock out you know, a couple different things at the same time. Attend a workshop or a class, get some PDUs, but also learn and be caught up with you know, some new changes or updates that are going on out there. So anyways, that is my Module 8 video. Hope you enjoyed the view in the background. I'm going to go back to my vacation and enjoy Eagle Crest Resort. Thank you, guys.